Hey guys, so I'm finally getting sat down to talk about my hairdresser, hair care, stroke advice video that I have been asked for on my vlog. So yeah, I am a qualified hairdresser. I don't do much hairdressing anymore. I qualified early. I qualified when I was 17 and I worked in many salons, and then when I became a mum I sort of went mobile and had a clientele, and then as the years went on I didn't do so much of it anymore. I just did friends and family, friends of friends, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I do now. Now I'm volunteering in a school. So I'm just gonna sit down and talk about some of my recommendations and hair care and that kind of thing, just because I've been asked. Hopefully you can take something from this video. I do have some notes because otherwise I would just chat about stuff that has absolutely no relevance, so I kind of want to keep on track and keep in some sort of order. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was shampoo. Now the shampoo that I like is sulfate free. This one's brilliant. It's Oars one, sulfate free shampoo. It's olive oil. It's really good for the hair. And this is probably the most inexpensive one that I could find. It's around £3 a bottle, and you can get it in Boots and Superdrug and stuff like that. Sulfate is extremely damaging on the hair, and if you do have hair that is colour treated, bleached, permed, and you kind of want to use gentle hands with it because you know you're having problems with your hair, just perhaps switch to a sulfate free shampoo. Maybe get a bottle, see how you go, and see if you can make some improvements with the quality of your hair, just sort of while, you know, because I know some people have hair disasters and stuff like that and they just want a quick fix. So switching from your normal shampoo to a sulfate free shampoo will definitely benefit your hair. I've actually just washed my hair and it's drying naturally. That's another thing I do. I let my hair dry naturally, so you can see its natural texture coming in. I've got like a wave to it. The other shampoo I really like is the Fanola one. It's not sulfate free, but it is no yellow, so it's a toning shampoo for any of you blondes or caramelly colours. It really helps, and I do use it a lot when I'm doing my blonde clients, and it does turn your hands blue, but I really recommend this, and you can pick this up on eBay. So conditioners, you kind of have two types of conditioners. You have conditioners that add proteins into the hair, and then you have conditioners that add moisture into the hair. And the balance between moisture and protein is unique to everybody. You do a porosity test on the hair very easily. You just take one of your hairs and you put it in a glass of water. Now, if it sinks, it means you lack in moisture. If it like sits on the surface and doesn't take in any of that moisture, it means you've got hair that's high in protein. Now, things that you do to your hair can upset the balance of your natural protein versus moisture. If your hair is like so blonde that it's gummy, like really gummy, doesn't dry very easily, you need to add proteins into your hair. A really good way to add proteins in the hair is this here. Now this one here is like full-on treatment. You can get a conditioner which is packs in a punch. A two-step protein treatment. I only have this step because the other one is just a conditioner, because this you wash your hair, you put this into your hair and then you dry it. Now when you dry it, it turns your hair rock solid, and you need to be very careful because it will snap, as in once it's dry, if you did that your hair would just snap off. But it is adding protein to the hair, so you let it do its thing and then you rinse it out very gently, and you put in a deep conditioning treatment and add in the moisture. So don't use this if you already have good protein in your hair, because you can have something that's called like protein damage, where your hair is so brittle and so dry and it will snap. So if your hair is gummy and has no strength, you need protein. If your hair seems to be really stiff and really crispy, it means you have the opposite. You have more protein to moisture, so you need to add in a moisturising treatment or conditioner. And if you read the back of the bottle, it pretty much tells you whether that conditioner has protein, moisture, or both, if you're getting good quality products. So yeah, this is really good for protein, but if your hair's already dry, do not use this. It will make your hair even more dry. You need moisture over protein. It's a whole lot of subject of the protein stroke moisture balance, but I'm just skimming through these. You've washed your hair, you've conditioned your hair or treated your hair, And now drying it. 1, never ever brush wet hair. Your hair is most vulnerable when it's wet, so use a wide tooth comb. The brushes that I use when my hair is dry, I actually like wooden brushes. So I have one wooden one that I use, and then this wooden one that has like these type of bristles that if I need to, like, you know, make it more flat. Whereas this one I'm just brush through. I like wooden brushes because they absorb the natural oils that are in your hair, and they pull them through to all of your hair. I just really like natural wooden brushes. Drying my hair, towels are actually quite abrasive on the hair. They're quite rough because your hair at the end of the day is a fabric. Just like wool is a fabric off a sheep's hair, your hair is also, you know, a fabric. It can get stained, it can become threadbare and break, you know, like you have your favourite t-shirt and you get holes in it because it's so old, it just, the fibre starts to break down. That's exactly kind of what split ends are. It's the fibre of your hair just breaking down. I have 2 types of hair towels that I like. I have this one which is microfiber from Primark, really inexpensive. It's good, but it doesn't do a great sort of job at getting the moisture out of your hair, but it's good to wrap your hair up if that's what you like. So something like this, which is just cotton, which doesn't rub against the hair, and I quite often just use one of my husband's like t-shirts to just wrap my hair in, and that does a really good job of drying it, and then you don't have to buy anything, you can just use a t-shirt. When you are drying your hair, try not to rub it because that causes frictions within the hair shaft, and then that will cause more damage. So just try and squeeze the moisture out and then just let it dry naturally, as I am now. My hair pretty much dry at this point, so just let it dry naturally if you can. Heat damage is a big thing, especially now we use like hair straighteners all the time. Just try and turn them down a little bit. Use a good heat protectant. A good way to test out a heat protection is to spray it on the back of your hand and then use your hairdryer and then blow it. Can you feel that heat, like really hot, or is it doing its job? That's a good way to test them. But yeah, use a heat protection and turn it down ever so slightly, and maybe don't straighten your hair as often because hair straighteners are evil things. So for hair bands, I really like these ones that are like stretchy. I don't like elastic hair bands. I've seen it so many times, time and time again, where people tie their hair up and then they come to me and then they have that line, you know, the line of the damage that a hairband causes, and you just have split ends in a dead straight line, and that is where their hair's being tied up too tight with those hairbands. These ones are really good because as they lock your hair in, they kind of do that which locks them in place, and it's still really secure, but you're not getting as much damage as an elastic hairband. So try not to use the elastic ones. Also, trimming split ends yourself. I do this a lot. Like, I'll just sit there with my hair like this, and then, because obviously my hair's got a lot of bleach on it, so I just sit there like this, and every time I see a split end, I just trim the very end of it. I've had people come to me and I'm like, your hair is so dry and the split ends, and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, if I see a split end, I just pull it apart. I'm like, oh my goodness. And they're going, I don't know why my hair won't grow. Well, that will be why. Try not to like pull at them, just cut them. You see them, just trim them. I'm not saying like take chunks off. I'm just saying ever so slightly, just go through them and trim the ends. Another thing that I do is I take a section of my hair and then I bend my hair between my fingers, and then I pull my hair down, and then you can't really see, but anything that's sort of sticking up, I'll look at it and I will just ever so slightly just trim off the split ends that are there. That's another good way to sort of get rid of split ends. Something else that I hear a lot of is, oh, hairdressers lie and they say you need to cut your hair for it to grow, and that's not true because your hair grows from the roots, not the ends. Now that is 100% true, but the point's being missed. That's kind of not what's being meant when it's being said. The point is, if you have split ends, those split ends are gonna break. That part of the hair is gonna break. And also, split ends travel up. Like, it will split and it will split and it will split, because it's kind of like a seam on a shirt. If it's tavered and it's breaking, it will just keep on going until it's stopped, until it's fixed. This is how I'm trying to explain it. So basically, if you do not trim off those split ends, as much as your hair is growing, this is just going to keep getting shorter because it's breaking. It's not that your hair's not growing, your hair is growing, but the rate it's breaking is quicker than the rate that it's growing. So just by chopping off those split ends will improve the look of your hair and will help it to grow. And I'm not saying you need to take chunks off, like you don't need to cut it to here. Just by you taking, you know, those split ends off will improve your hair so much. So now I'm going to talk about hair colour. I have a base chart here from a 1 to a 10, 1 being the darkest and 10 to being the lightest. Most hair colours work along a numbering system, and these are, the first number you see on a die will be the base number. So if you have, for instance, 7, 1, 7 is the base, which is that, and 1 is ash, 1 is equivalent to ash, 3 is gold, so on, so on, so on. Some numbering systems are slightly different, but there is a general rule of thumb that most do follow. Now with hair dye, you can only lift your hair 3 levels unless it is a high lift tint, which you get a bit more from. The general rule is tint does not lift tint. Although if your hair is so damaged that your hair is unable to hold the colour and it fades, like if you put a level 3 on and your hair is so damaged that, you know, within a couple of months it already looks like this, then you could effectively put a 7 tint on top of that and it would take, because not because that tint has lifted that tint, but just because your hair is at the point where it can't hold on to colour pigments. So that's where that goes. With home dyes, you hear a lot of hairdressers saying don't use home dyes, they are evil. I kind of just want to explain that. I have nothing personally against home dyes, but they are very generic, as in, depending on what, this is a grey chart, depending on your percentage. So you have, this is what someone with 10% of grey will look like, 30% right up to 90% grey in the hair. Now grey hair tends to be, not always, because I do have a couple of customers that have beautiful grey hair that's very soft, but grey tends to be a lot more resistant to colour, which means you need to quite often do a peroxide treatment before you colour the hair, or what I tend to do is increase the peroxide level to help, you know, colour the hair, because the hair is so resistant. Now because home dyes are trying to cater for everybody, they don't know your base level and they don't know your percentage of grey. So what they tend to do is they just use the highest peroxide level that they would use in the worst case scenario. So that means if you have hair that is light and no grey and very soft and don't need a really high peroxide level, for instance, if you had a level 7 and you wanted to go to sort of a quite deep brown, I don't need to lift, so I don't need to use a high peroxide level. I'd actually use quite a low peroxide level. But the company that is making these products doesn't know where you're starting from. They don't know what percentage of grey you have, so they work on the worst case scenario. So that means a lot of people's hair gets damaged because the chemicals that are being used are too strong for their hair. They would suit someone else, but they're just too strong for that specific person. So that's kind of where I believe home dyes get a bad name, because you're trying to cater for everybody, and if you went into a salon, that's not how we do it. We would assess exactly where your hair is at and what needs to happen, but box dyes can't do that. Saying that, if you are dyeing your hair to try and eliminate the damage, if you're doing your roots, just do your roots. Excuse that bruise, I bruise so easily. If you're doing your roots, just do your roots. Don't put it on all over. Another thing that you can do is get a water spray. So if you need to freshen up the ends, they don't need re-dyeing. If you just do your roots, then spray your ends with like water and then pull it through down for the last 5 minutes. The water will help dilute the peroxide level, so you're not, if it's a 30% peroxide level, you're not damaging those ends more than you need to. I'm making sense. I'm trying to talk as plain as possible. I think the most common thing that hairdressers get asked, and the most common thing that goes wrong at home, is trying to get from dark to light. Trying to get from a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to a level 10. So I'm gonna try and give some information on that. Now, so if your hair is naturally very dark, and mine is, actually I'm around a level 4, so my hair is very dark, and I do have parts of my hair which are very light, but that's a very slow process for me. Luckily nowadays we have Olaplex and Fiberplex and all the other plexes which help bond the hair and help you get lighter, which when I was training we didn't have any of that. So if you go to a hairdresser and you've got dark hair, you definitely need to have a plex, because there's no way I would be able to be as light as I am now. And I don't want to be platinum blonde, I just want to lighten my hair because I have greys coming in as I'm getting older, and I kind of just want to disguise them, because if I have like white hairs coming through my dark base, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So I'm just thinking, if I have more of a blonde honeytone colours, they blend in so much nicer, and I do it so it gets from darker to lighter, so I can get away with it. That's the idea. So if you're having the same issues with me, perhaps do something like this where it goes from darker to lighter. But anyway, I'm digressing. So if your hair is naturally on this end of the scale and you want to have more of these tones, that's relatively straightforward. It is possible with no major hiccups. It's going to take a long time. You're going to need, you know, a plex treatment, and you're going to need to really look after that hair because it will be quite fragile by the time it gets to this state. But with the right products and the right care, you will definitely be able to do it and maintain it with no problem. If you have dyed your hair on this end of the scale, then you start running into big problems, because the underlying pigment of these is red and then orange as you bleach it up. So if you've dyed your hair black and you want to go blonde, you're in for a long road. I would never ever try and get from here to here in one go, and I think a lot of people think that they can, you know, they can just dye it and it will go blonde, and they try it themselves and it goes wrong, and then they go to a hairdresser and then they still don't get there, but it's the hairdresser's fault, and that's not fair. You have to have realistic expectations. It's never going to happen. You could go to the best hairdresser ever, it's not going to happen. You have to do it in stages. So I have had customers that have had this done, so they've got really dark hair and they want to get blonde, and I generally, with every 6 weeks I book them in, we just lift up, you know, 2 levels. So it takes a long time, but it's the most nicest way and most gentlest way and the best way to do it. So you kind of go from dark to like a mid dark, and then maybe to here, and then we'll start adding in highlights and toning them in, and then you just ever so slightly bump it up every 6 weeks. And I know that then starts to get really expensive. If there was another way to do it, people would do it 100%. And sometimes, depending on the person's hair, you can quite often put in colour extractor and get right up here. That's rare, but it has happened, and people will always say, well, that one time did happen. It can happen. So you put in the colour extractor and then you see what you're left with and you work with that, and then the next time you work with it again. You need to have time for the hair to recover from the process it's already had. So if you are dark and you do want to go blonde, you have to be very patient. Perhaps even think about maybe getting a short bob, because people will say to me, my hair's natural, and I'll feel it and I'll say, no, your hair's not natural, there's definitely dye in it. Oh yeah, I mean, I dyed it 2 years ago, but that's gone now, it's faded, it's gone. No, it's not gone. You think it's gone because it's faded out, but those false pigments are still in that hair, and then when you add bleach to it, you get the red and the orange that just will not budge. So in those instances, what I tend to do is I ash them out, but just keep it at like a mid-brown when you're trying to go from here. If you're about here, it's pretty easy. You've only got a few levels. If I give you a closer look at that. It only does depend where you are on the spectrum, where you want to be. Most people tend to want ash tones, although I like honey tones. I like the more warmth, but I think it is because I am so dark that I think it complements me. It's what I prefer. It's all personal preference. So yeah, if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them and give advice. I hope that I've covered everything, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye. So if you have put in a like colour oops, or you have bleached your hair and your hair is orange, I suggest that you go and get a 6 ash, which is about here, and put that on it. That way, I know you're bringing it down, but it is much easier. And just keep putting 6 ash on it, 6-1. Keep putting that 6-1 on your hair and give your hair a break until it's strong again. Because I've heard so many times people have gone dark, put a colour oops, expected to come here, been orange, and then they're like, I don't know what to do, so they dye it dark again. That's always an option, but if it is your goal to get there, go out and get a 6-1 and put that on your hair. Easier for you then to get from a 6 to a blonde, and a 6 is a low enough base to be able to get rid of the orange. It really is. So if your hair's orange and you don't know what to do, and you're like, I think I'm going to have to put a black back on my hair because I can't cope, buy a 6-1. That's the best advice I've got as a generic piece of advice that I can give to anybody.